This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Chapter 13, The Guiltless World. Introduction, Paragraph 1. If you did not feel guilty, you could not attack, for condemnation is the root of attack. It is the judgment of one mind by another as unworthy of love and deserving of punishment. But herein lies the split. For the mind that judges perceives itself as separate from the mind being judged, believing that by punishing another, it will escape punishment. All this is but a delusional attempt of the mind to deny itself and escape the penalty of denial. It is not an attempt to relinquish denial, but to hold on to it. For it is guilt that has obscured the Father to you, and it is guilt that has driven you insane.
There's a serious rub in this section between Christians who could benefit greatly by doing the Course in Miracles and the New Age type Course in Miracles people. There's a kind of a rub here about guilt, and that's what we cover here. And in this first chapter is just, there's a basic method here. There's a basic understanding, an axiom of when I judge, I become separate from the thing judged. See, that's metaphysical reality. It's not like, don't judge because it's not right to judge. This is metaphysics.
Right.
If I judge, I become a separate object from that being judged. This is the problem with judgment.
Agreed.
Okay.
And also, just as a thought, the idea of guilt, coming from a Catholic background and things like that, guilt, I always thought, served a purpose. It serves a purpose for me to understand morals. In other words, if I'm feeling guilty, I must have done something wrong. And if I've done something wrong, then I internally feel as though I need to be punished. And then I need to atone for that punishment. So I'm just saying that the cycle of what this world does, not only through the Catholic Church, because I actually went to a Bible study.
It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. And other people say, oh, that's not just in Catholicism. It's Christianity in general, based on the fact that we have a God who is both a merciful God, and particularly in the Old Testaments, a merciful God and a punishing God. And this actually counters that.
Well, let's explore it. Let's explore it, because the idea of guilt and reform and rethinking, that we have to cover these things.
Right.
You can't just flush them down the proverbial
No,
New
I
Age
just thought
toilet.
that maybe there's more that this wouldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Paragraph 2. The acceptance of guilt into the mind of God's Son was the beginning of this separation, as the acceptance of the atonement is its end. The world you see is the delusional system of those made mad by guilt. Look carefully at this world, and you will realize that this is so. For this world is the symbol of punishment, and all the laws that seem to govern it are the laws of death. Children are born into it through pain, and in pain. Their growth is attended by suffering, and they learn of sorrow and separation and death. Their minds seem to be trapped in their brain, and its powers to decline if their bodies are hurt. They seem to love, yet they desert and are deserted. They appear to lose what they love, perhaps the most insane belief of all. And their bodies wither and gasp and are laid in the ground and are no more. Not one of them but has thought that God is cruel.
Oh, there you go. That's the problem with the strict biblical stories and things like that in the Old Testament. There's this constant thing that's going on where if you follow all of these things, God, bestows blessings upon you, and if you don't, then God is going to punish you.
Well, this paragraph, to me, it's an assessment of the world system. Mm-hmm. And I'd say a person could say it's harsh because children may be born in pain and die in pain and live in pain. But there's joy, there's fun, there's exploration, there's laughter. There's a lot of great things here, okay? Right. But the Course is offering another way of perceiving reality. It's not here just to judgment. It's not here.
Oh, right, yeah. Don't judge judgment. Paragraph 3. If this were the real world, God would be cruel. For no father could subject his children to this as the price of salvation and be loving. Love does not kill to save. If it did, attack would be salvation. And this is the ego's interpretation, not God's. Only the world of guilt could demand this, for only the guilty could conceive of it. Adam's sin could have touched no one had he not believed it was the Father who drove him out of paradise. For in that belief, the knowledge of the Father was lost, since only those who do not understand him could believe it.
Jesus Christ is called the new Adam. Mm-hmm. And the reason he's the new Adam is he's a blameless Adam. Our first Adam, the one who was driven from the Garden of Paradise by God, as it says here, God can't drive, he can't condemn. Away. God can't condemn. This is critical to the Christian understanding that there is sin and there's punishment. Mm-hmm. And the wages of sin is death. It's in the New Testament, it's in Paul. What?
Well, in a sense, that particular statement is correct. For sin in the interpretation of the Course is a mistake.
Yeah, okay. If you believe in sin, if you're cruising in the world of sin, if that's where you are, yes, by all means, you will die.
Yeah, so death is its final outcome. But this is saying that God would not kill his son, nor would he condemn his son. He knows his son is one with him, and therefore is the same as him.
But Adam did wrong. According to the story, Adam did wrong. Mm-hmm. And God said, I set up some guidelines. Mm-hmm. You broke the rule, so you lost your privileges.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that? What's really wrong with that? Isn't that... Don't you do that with every kid? Don't you do that as a parent or?
Yes, we do. So
what should we do different? What did we do wrong?
Well, the thing of it is that until the belief system about guilt and punishment is changed, to just remove disciplinary actions from a mind that doesn't know that it is still at one with its Father would be complete chaos. The mind has to awaken to its atonement, to its that I am one with my Father. It has to awaken to it, and it has to believe in it, absolutely, without any other, perturbations going back and forth. It has to be knowing of it. And until that happens on what I would call a mass scale, and I always visualize in my own mind that it can happen with, you and I are working on this. How many minds will begin to awaken to that I'm not just a body, I'm an eternal being?
Right. No, there's things that can happen, and it's not our place.
There's this trickle-out effect. But until the sonship begins to have just all of a sudden it feels like their eyes are open, until it's become sort of what they call the 100th monkey, where it starts to have an effect out there. to just remove the structure of laws that are in place with punishment for the guilty and, terrible things that happen from one body to the next, murder and rape and all these other things, would be completely cause so much fear, cause so much chaos.
Well,
it would be impossible.
Let me tell a story that includes some of these principles, and it's so important that we get to this without lapsing into metaphysics of which I can't explain or predict or understand, and are also throwing guilt, punishment, prison for the unforgivable crimes, and throwing that overboard in the name of forgiveness or some sort of compassion or something. So I have this story. Myself and two of my friends, actually three of my friends, we were in my garage, and we were doing something, but that something involved red enamel paint. And something happened. I don't know, we were horsing around. Something happened. We're in my parents' garage. My dad is a stern guy, okay? And, he didn't beat us or anything, but he had a reputation for being very much, the poker face at best. He just looked, So my friends understood him to be this stern guy. The paint dumps and went all over the garage floor, red enamel on my dad's garage floor. And he's a fairly meticulous guy. These other guys, it was getting close to 4 o'clock, and two of those guys, one guy says, "Wow, what time is it? I got to get out of here." So he left. My dad's going to be coming home from work, which is roughly 4 o'clock. So one guy left, and when he left, the other guy said, yeah, I guess I ought to go too. And they ran, and I realized they were afraid. I realized they were afraid of facing my dad's wrath. Jimmy stayed there with me. Jimmy did. Bless his heart. He shared this situation with me, and we thought the hammer was going to come down on us from this stern dad. We did the best we could to scrape it up. We did the best we could to clean it up. We got out gasoline, we cleaned the floor, left a big red stain in the middle of the floor. But it was as good as it gets, because you don't dump enamel on concrete and you don't pay a price.
Right.
You're going to have red on the floor. My dad walks in. Jimmy's by my side. We're expecting, we don't know what to expect, but we don't think it's going to go well. And my dad smiles at us, and he lets us off the hook.
Yeah.
He just says, it's okay. So we cleaned up the garage. We did the best we could. We were prepared for paying a price. My dad understood we had no ability to either get that stain out of the floor, and that boys will be boys, and that it was not a hateful gesture against him. He didn't take it personally that the garage was stained. And so now the garage goes forward for all time with a red spot on the floor, right?
Yeah.
It just records an event. And the risen Christ, even the New Testament, comes back from the dead with what? Holes all over the place. He didn't heal those holes.
Yeah.
The holes stay. The holes made by the nails in his side. So things have consequences. Actions have consequences. Now, if I was a kid who insisted on, every time my dad leaves, opening up paint and throwing it on the floor, he's going to forbid me. He's going to put me in a kind of a prison. He's going to stop me from being that way because it's an intentional rebelliousness. He's not going to, quote unquote, forgive my rebelliousness. He's going to protect the house, his paints, his materials. He's going to protect them from my desire to rebel somehow. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that it answers some of the questions in this. Is that Adam, to the degree he intentionally violated God's will, for whatever it was, there are consequences, and the world has to be protected from this guy. Now, the thing is there a means in place for me to... Now, my dad recognized that this is a mistake. I had already, in other words, no blame. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? No blame. Purity is still reigning everywhere. All we have is a stain on the floor. No harm done. No sin.
Right.
But the stain is there. The garage has been ruined, so to speak.
Okay. So I'm not quite sure what...
So ask me.
You know, when I read this section, all those circumstances are taking place within the mindset of guilt and punishment. That's why you even had the thought to begin with.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Is in that mindset. And we find that this world will function better with punishment for...
But do you understand? My dad,
no, I know.
God the Father,
right? He
has not one cell in his body that wants to irrationally punish me. My dad is not so effing small-minded that he thinks that the garage is his body, that it's him.
Okay, I see where you're going. So you're saying that God is the same as what your father did in that instance.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
God holds us blameless. Why?
Right.
Because he doesn't confuse this world with him.
Right. And that is exactly true. And, in this particular paragraph.
But he knows that this world, we confuse it with us.
Yeah, we confuse it.
So he will protect our world from us with certain laws of God. In other words, you don't just fly around, do whatever you want to do. You don't do whatever you want to do. You pay a price. And if part of that price is prison or the capital punishment or whatever these things are, whatever happens in this world of spilled paint, it's not mine to, if I were designing the world all by myself, maybe I'd come up with something else. But right now, when people do certain things, they might end up on death row.
Well, I understand, but you're staying within the context of the unreal world when you say all of those things.
Absolutely. But I'm saying that the problem that people have with the Course in Miracles is thinking that we are saying something for that we're saying something about the real world when we're saying it's guiltlessness, you're off the hook, no blame, all this kind of thing.
What it's saying to me is that unless I, as an individual, will look upon the world and understand that what I thought is happening to me and the sonship, which is all other beings, hasn't happened. That's why I forgive it. It doesn't happen because it's in a time space.
I'll tell you why you don't forgive it, because if you don't forgive it, you are on the hook for what you are complaining about.
Yes, right.
You don't forgive it because you're great or because you understand something. You forgive it because you don't want to be punished by your lack of forgiveness.
Well, no, if I understand the Course, it's not the way I'm working my forgiveness anymore. My forgiveness comes from recognizing that the things that I think are real aren't happening. They're only happening because I believe in their reality.
If you project anything onto another person, it's going to hit you in the face.
That's right.
It's going to hit you in the face.
Okay.
That's called pain. That's called punishment.
Okay, right. Those are the laws.
And that's the way that God set up the blameless sonship to keep us straight. Because the blameless sonship, if you attack that blameless person out there, that blame comes back and smacks you in the face. Why? So that you'll learn. There's the banishment from the Garden of Eden, is that we separated ourselves and run around blaming. And as soon as we quit that process, that's what he's saying. The reason that we're here is
as soon as I thought that I could desert God.
Yeah.
As soon as I thought that I could, first of all, I can abandon him, I can desert him, and therefore I am abandoned by my Father. That's when the mad idea came in. And with that mad idea came guilt and punishment. The mad idea produced that structure.
The mad idea has in it what we consider guilt and punishment.
Yes, absolutely. And we function in this world based on that first idea that I thought I could be abandoned by my Father and that I could abandon him. That is the thing that I have to resolve in understanding that God never left me. He didn't banish me from the kingdom, But because I believed I could be banished from the kingdom, I created guilt. And therefore, as soon as I become guilt, that means others can be guilty and I can blame them for my pain. In other words, we set up the structure and the whole world is built off of that structure.
Well, let me go back to my story briefly. I go back and let's say Al and Bill left when the paint spilled. And I could have said, in fear of my father, in terror and in guilt, I could have said, Dad, Al kicked the paint over.
Oh, right. And lied about it.
And that would be a projection.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I would then live with guilt, never knowing the Father's love.
Well, that's true. And that's what's happened here.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what Adam did.
Right. Yes.
He did not take responsibility for what he did and say, I did it. And so now the sin, quote unquote, the sin of Adam, original sin, whatever you want to call it, goes forward in time linearly as never having fessed up that I did something that was undoable. And then it'd show up naked. I mean, that was right, the first thing that God said. And Adam shows up with a fig leaf.
Because he recognizes his
He has to cover up his guilt.
Yes, he has to cover up his guilt. Okay, well, let's keep going because we could get stuck on here for a little while.
Okay, so paragraph 4, are we? This world is a picture of the crucifixion of God's Son. And until you realize that God's Son cannot be crucified, this is the world you will see. Yet you will not realize this until you accept the eternal fact that God's Son is not guilty. He deserves only love, because he has given only love. He cannot be condemned because he has never condemned. The atonement is the final lesson he need learn, for it teaches him that, never having sinned, he has no need of salvation.
So, again, God, it said that in the prior paragraph that love does not kill to save. It's saying that God did not crucify his Son, basically in these two paragraphs right here. The world crucified, the perceptual world gave the impression of a crucified Son of God. But God did not do anything like that. And Jesus, we do not know where his atonement or atonement was already in awareness of the Father to know whether or not he perceived himself as in someone who cannot die. Because usually when someone has a complete awareness of their atonement with God, they recognize that the body is only a vehicle that goes through this world, in this perceptual world, but the truth of who, let's say who I am, is eternal. And you can do all kinds of things to this body and it will not die. I will not die. The body will go away. But I, the I that's one with the Father, will not go away. But so long as I believe in a body that can be flogged and done all kinds of things and crucified, I will think that I have a very cruel Father who would do this to his Son.
In my flawed example, let me put it more in Course in Miracles kind of biblical, whatever terms. My Father loves his Son. I'm the Son.
Right.
He loves me, and I want to conform to the Father's will.
Yeah.
And yet, in that setting, I split off. I play in the garage. I have my friends. I'm in my own world. It's a learning process.
Right.
It's part of what it is to be a human being. Is this splitting off, this separation. And I'm in there, and I spill paint, and there's a problem. Suddenly, I've quote unquote sinned against my own Father. I've soiled his basement. I've wasted his paint, and all this kind of thing. If at that moment I sheared away from my dad, Bill Hamilton, if I'd sheared away from him, saying, the love between us is not strong enough. This is why it's a flawed example. Because if I had sheared away, then I would be carrying that guilt even till today.
Yes.
Until the moment when I recognized my dad loves me enough to accept what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so that in this situation, that's where it doesn't happen. That's why it doesn't happen. I didn't sin against my dad, and what makes that quote-unquote sin of spilled paint real would have been denial.
Oh, yeah.
That the denial would have made the sin real, and I would have felt the guilt forever.
Right. Okay.
But
see
the
what
thing
you're
is,
saying.
my dad did love me. He was bigger than that. So if you take the perfection of the Father and the sonship, in the perfected version of this story, nothing the sonship can do can violate the Father. Nothing.
That's right.
And God the Father will always protect the Son against any adventures the Son might choose to go on in terms of separation or anything else. And as soon as the Son says, I spilled the red paint of separation, I did this thing, immediately that individual is restored to the sonship with the vision of God.
Right. Which is the story of the prodigal son. That's one of the beautiful things about that particular story. Okay. We're going to move on to section 1, Guiltlessness and Invulnerability. Paragraph 1. Earlier, I said that the Holy Spirit shares the goal of all good teachers, whose ultimate aim is to make themselves unnecessary by teaching their pupils all they know. The Holy Spirit wants only this. For sharing the Father's love for his Son, he seeks to remove all guilt from his mind, that he may remember his Father in peace. Peace and guilt are antithetical, and the Father can be remembered only in peace. Love and guilt cannot coexist, and to accept one is to deny the other. Guilt hides Christ from your sight, for it is the denial of the blamelessness of God's Son.
And I won't go long again, my example for me, and I hope it does for anybody else, is you can see that separation and guilt are the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that love and guilt cannot exist. In other words, I will never experience the Father's love, and I will be preoccupied with dodging his wrath if I don't, as long as I feel guilty because of not being honest about myself.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. And the Course says complete honesty is that you remember that you've never left the Father, that it was impossible. It's an impossibility. What I like about this particular story, or this particular part right here, is that good teachers whose ultimate aim is to make themselves unnecessary by teaching their pupils all they know. I feel like Jesus, when he occupied this realm as an incarnate being, that was his ultimate aim, to make it necessary that his pupils have as the same knowledge, which originally would have been their disciples, as what he had.
And if I see the whole passion play, crucifixion, in that light of the maximum lesson, understanding the maximum lesson, I think that you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so he would never teach anything but love. He would teach only peace. And when the crucifixion, which, as a body-centric world, the disciples misinterpreted what happened when he got thrown up. He's going through all these motions of falling however many times, and being flogged and crucified and nailed and everything else.
Right.
And so now it looks like, how could someone who says he's one with his Father be in this position to have this happen? Well, he needed it. I mean, the only thing I can understand is that he needed a dramatic example of his God's love, which meant that he shows he does not die. He's resurrected. He lives forever because his Father loves him so much. So it's a symbol of that, but for some reason in Christian world, the crucifixion is the one that we hold on to, and not the resurrection.
Well, you can see how in the story that I have worn out about the paint in the garage,
Yeah.
if I had clung to the fact that my dad can't forgive that kind of egregious, act of spilling paint, that I would be with it even now, having doubt about the Father's love, projecting onto my dad a lack of forgiveness. It would have been calcified into my mind over time.
Right.
It would have accumulated other things. We've done this with God. Jesus, ironically, our way of receiving the passion, the flogging, the falling, the crucifixion, and we say, God did it. Did he? No. It looked like the Romans. It looked like a bunch of Jewish people. It looked like a bunch of human beings that did it. What the hell? Where does God come into this thing? And the Course is saying the same thing. Why are you blaming God for the troubles in your life?
Right. That's a very good point. That's a very, very good point.
That's my passion. God has no more interest in scourging Jesus than he has of scourging me.
Exactly. Good point. Shall we go on?
In the strange world that you have made, the Son of God has sinned. How could you see him then? By making him invisible, the world of retribution rose in the black cloud of guilt that you accepted, and you hold it dear. For the blamelessness of Christ is the proof that the ego never was and can never be. Without guilt, the ego has no life, and God's Son is without guilt. So now we have it's a parallel development. The ego is preserving guilt.
Right. And I think from that
What does that mean? Help me out. The ego, how is it that the ego is preserving guilt? Because that's what I've heard it say.
Because the ego, which wants a, quote, perceived life of its own, requires guilt in order to keep the separation intact.
In the case of my garage scene, ego would be where? Ego is the invention I created to maintain a separation between me and my dad.
Yes.
It would have been a storyline that I invented, that my dad is as harsh as everybody says he is, and that he didn't have enough magnanimity to get over it, and that he would have punished me unreasonably, so it's better for me to lay it on somebody that's not there.
And if you were to look at, if you could go back then or whatever and look at your mind, you suspended what your dad would really what he was going to do. You really didn't know, and you suspended it. It's Schrodinger's cat. What's
I thought I was going to get grounded at least a week.
Yeah, okay, so you thought that you were going to be grounded, but you left it to your father to make the decision about what needs to happen. You suspended enough to say, I don't know. Because as soon as this is my interpretation, as soon as we lock in what we think is going to totally, is necessary. In other words, if you felt so guilty that you thought that you had to be punished, you would have either helped that self-flagellation type of thing going for yourself indefinitely until you felt like, well, maybe enough time has passed. Or you may have created that your dad really was going to do something, bring out the strap or whatever it was.
Well, and people do that. There's the psychosomatic illnesses, psychosomatic wounds, where you're going through something that you think you need punishment for, so you sabotage some aspect of your life. That happens all the time.
It does. And sometimes it creates what we call illness.
Okay,
paragraph 3. As you look upon yourself and judge what you do honestly, you may be tempted to wonder how you can be guiltless. Yet consider this. You're not guiltless in time, but in eternity. You have sinned in the past, but there is no past. Always has no direction. Time seems to go in one direction. But when you reach its end, it will roll up like a long carpet, spread along the past behind you, and will disappear. As long as you believe the Son of God is guilty, you will walk along this carpet, believing that it leads to death. And the journey will seem long and cruel and senseless, for so it is. Well, you see how the structure of time, because we believe in time, and so we are not guiltless in time, but in eternity. So long as we believe in a past-present orientation of our mind, we will believe that we have sinned. And that's interesting to me. Time seems to go in one direction, but when you reach its end, it will roll up like a long carpet spread along the past behind you and will disappear.
According to the Course, what I'm understanding from it is that time itself could be relabeled as deferment. In other words, I'm constantly deferring. I'm constantly putting off into the future what I could be self-honest about in the moment. And so that there's a continuous throwing the present moment, refusing to face a present moment, whatever that is, whatever my fear is of this present moment, I'm constantly throwing it into the future. So therefore, only in time do I have any guilt, because if I were to address it right now, it is all resolved in a stroke in the present moment.
I agree. That's an interesting way of putting it. And I actually think that's actually accurate.
If I drag it back to the dad thing, you can see how if I had dragged it into the future, I would have had guilt following me like a carpet through my life.
Yeah.
But because I addressed it in that present moment, it did not at all.
Yeah.
And all I have is a memory of my dad's smile, to be honest with you. That's all I have.
Isn't that beautiful? I love that. Okay, let's go on.
4, the journey the Son of God has set himself is useless indeed, but the journey on which his Father sets him is one of release and joy. The Father is not cruel, and his Son cannot hurt himself. The retaliation that he fears and that he sees will never touch him, for although he believes in it, the Holy Spirit knows it is not true. The Holy Spirit stands at the end of time where you must be because he is with you. He has already undone everything unworthy of the Son of God, for such was his mission, given him by God, and what God gives has always been. And the undoing is interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is really erased, so to speak. You know, the wars, the sins, the crimes, the heinous things. We're talking about a reinterpretation in the light of the illusion that you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
But my mind's not there. I don't grasp timelessness or the illusion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And not until we, practice each of these. All I know is that for myself, there are these moments more and more as I keep practicing the lessons, that there are moments of complete peace when we rest for those 5 minutes. There's complete, for me, it's just been, that's really wonderful because it is a remembrance. Some kind of calm comes over. And it's only in a continual practice. And to me, the Course wants you to line up those moments, those 5 minutes upon 5 minutes upon 5 minutes, until they all merge. And you remember, and you carry that peace. You carry that peace and the love that you can extend now to the world because you embody it because you now have a remembering. You're just remembering what you really are. To me, now we're working a real good thing in the world. I hope, and it's my hope and prayer that
right, that it has effect.
That has effect, right. I don't know if there was anything else.
No, I think we should go on.
Yeah, in that particular one. Paragraph 5. You will see me as you learn the Son of God is guiltless. He has always sought his guiltlessness, and he has found it. For everyone is seeking to escape from the prison he has made, and the way to find release is not denied him. Being in him, he has found it. When he finds it is only a matter of time, and time is but an illusion. For the Son of God is guiltless now, and the brightness of his purity shines untouched forever in God's mind. God's Son will always be as he was created. Deny your world and judge him not, for his eternal guiltlessness is in the mind of his Father and protects him forever.
If I remember reading the Course in Miracles way back, let's say, I'd say, what are we talking, 20, 30 years ago, I guess. I would read something like this and think, that it sounds nice.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I read it, I realize that it's giving me a prescription. It's basically saying, right now, you have available to you turning around. It's available. It really is available.
Mm-hmm.
And this first line, you will see me as you learn the Son of God is guiltless. And then in the next sentence, there's this reflexive thing again where there's a confusion. He has always sought his guiltlessness. That's the Son of God. And he has found it. But so he's conflating.
So it's simultaneous.
He's conflating he, meaning the Son, the sonship out there, the people that I see out there. He's conflating these. He's collapsing them. And me. Mm-hmm. He's treating them as though they're no different.
Exactly.
You will see me as you learn the Son of God is guiltless. And he has always sought his guiltlessness. Mm-hmm. He just got through addressing me, and now he's lumping me in with that generic other. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, And he has found it, meaning, as soon as he sought it, he found it. As soon as the separation was thought of, the answer was given, which was the Holy Spirit's answer, that God didn't condemn you.
This world of faces and activities and things that bug me, really, that's where the deal is. Sure, the beautiful things, but the things that bug me, this world, is a cachet of wealth called the sonship. And if I take these things that bug me, these things that I would rather not exist, and I say, here I am again, let's have a reinterpretation. It exists, all that bugging that goes on, it exists for that reinterpretation. That's why it's there. It's not there to bug me.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, every time there's something that comes up where there's an inner turmoil or anything else,
it is
the opportunity at that point to apply what we're learning and then have it. And we have had so many, quote, miracles happen just through various things of prayer and suspension of what we think needs to happen. And many beautiful things have happened, and I love that.
Well, this is how God has preserved the blameless innocence of the sonship. He preserved it in all those guys out there that bug me. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't have it. I'm just follow me. I don't have it because I'm bugged. Mm-hmm. As soon as I challenge the bugging, as soon as I challenge that irritation, that problem that I have, however slight it is, if I challenge that, the sonship flows toward me from the cachet, the wealth of the innocence of God's Son that's preserved always in the others, because the ego can only exist in one place. You know where?
In me.
That's what an ego is.
Yeah.
I'm the center. I'm separate. They are not part of that. Mm-hmm. Them out there. And the second that I challenge this egoic understanding of what those people are up to, the fact that they bug me, God flows toward me as a gift.
I agree.
He set it up that way.
Yeah.
That's why we're safe. That's why this is okay. That's why we can't go to hell unless we really, really want to.
Right. All right. Paragraph 6.
When you have accepted the atonement for yourself, you will realize there is no guilt in God's Son, and only as you look upon him as guiltless can you understand his oneness. For the idea of guilt brings a belief in condemnation of one by another, projecting separation in place of unity. You can condemn only yourself, and by so doing, you cannot know that you are God's Son. You've denied the condition of his being, which is his perfect blamelessness. Out of love he was created, and in love he abides. Goodness and mercy have always followed him, for he has always extended the love of his Father. So you see, when I'm bugged by something, or when I hate something, or when I don't like something, I'm separate from that something.
Yes.
And the minute I turn this over, because I got no choice but to go to the Holy Spirit, or Jesus, you will see me as you learn the Son of God is guiltless. That's what Jesus said in paragraph 5.
Right.
When I do that, I'm welcomed back into the blameless sonship. You see? I'm welcomed back, and now I'm no longer the ego. I'm no longer a separate thing. Instead, I am in the proverbial communion of saints, having recognized I was wrong about that, give the Holy Spirit a shot at helping me to see how and where I was wrong.
Right.
So the methodology here, to me, seems absolutely flawless.
It is flawless, and all of it is up to us as to what we're going to decide to do in any particular moment where those things come at us and we get upset with them. You know, I think that we learn to change our mind more easily and quickly once we recognize we're only keeping our own self in a place of discomfort, which is my own hell, which is my own interpretation of either my guiltiness or that other person's guiltiness, because I'm blaming them for this, which means that now I am able to be guilty as well. As soon as we begin to recognize those things, we can do the turnaround pretty quickly by recognizing that there's an upset happening. Do I want that? How much do I want to be right about it? How much do I want to be, in this thing that is going to keep me in a state of anxiety and turmoil? Or do I want to see it another way?
But you see the example I used of the paint in the garage, if I had projected it out onto someone that wasn't there and said they did it, or even convinced myself that that was the case, you can see that delusional manifestations, bizarre ideas start to breed. Suddenly, I start to believe maybe that they actually did that, or I believe that I'm a liar, or I believe that my dad is angry. So many delusional beliefs are given a place to breed and grow.
I agree. Paragraph 7. As you perceive the holy companions who travel with you, you will realize that there is no journey, but only an awakening. The Son of God, who sleepeth not, has kept faith with his Father for you. There is no road to travel on, no time to travel through. For God waits not for his Son in time, being forever unwilling to be without him. And so it has always been. Let the holiness of God's Son shine away the cloud of guilt that darkens your mind. And by accepting his purity as yours, learn of him that it is yours.
Can I go ahead with 8?
Yeah, I think that one's pretty, all of this part is just about my awakening.
We've been talking about it, this awakening thing. Paragraph 8, you are invulnerable because you are guiltless. You can hold on to the past only through guilt, for guilt establishes that you will be punished for what you have done, and thus depends on one-dimensional time proceeding from past to future. No one who believes this can understand what always means, and therefore guilt must deprive you of the appreciation of eternity. You are immortal because you are eternal, and always, in quotes, must be now. Guilt, then, is a way of holding past and future in your mind to ensure the ego's continuity.
Yeah, that's what I spoke of. Yeah.
For if what has been will be punished, the ego's continuity is guaranteed. Yet the guarantee of your continuity is God's, not the ego's. And immortality is the opposite of time, for time passes away, while immortality is constant. The deal that slips into my mind, and I have a vague sense, is that the idea of punishing the wrongdoing, you end up elevating the idea of punishment to a place where, let's say, punishment exists. What you want is protection, and you want protection, meaning, if you have people in a society that are bent on destroying or doing this or that or whatever, it is valid and essential that you protect the society from those people as you would protect a meditation group from a screaming 2-year-old. It's delusional to let, let's say, a kid that's quote-unquote misbehaved, makes a lot of noise, sit in a zazen. That's ridiculous. So that's a fact of where we live. That's separation. That's not punishment. Isolating a 2-year-old from a zazen sitting session is not punishment.
Okay.
That's a separation based on society, based on what we've got in terms of being separate creatures. And it would be delusional for us to pretend that we're going to meditate our way through a kid that's, let's say, crying continuously for an hour or something.
Okay.
So that's punishment. And then there's an environment that needs to be fixed. If an environment is damaged, it must be fixed. That's not punishment. That's restoring order. It's restoring an environment. But what happens is we think of punishment. Okay, you're going to do community service. What? You're supposed to be fixing the community, not being punished by just, holding a flag at a construction site or something. You understand what I'm saying? By labeling punishment as a thing in itself, and we say, what punishment are they getting? Instead of understanding as an enlightened society that there's protection and there's restoration.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure in the context of this.
Okay, we'll say
I just don't.
This is saying the past has never been, the future is needless and will not be, the future in time. Isn't that where we are?
Yeah.
And only guilt could induce a sense of a need for expiation. Only guilt. So is the 2-year-old at the zazen, are they guilty?
No.
But by God, there's people sitting in that room. They're going to say the parents are guilty, the kid is guilty. Why? Because people aren't addressing the situation, which is protect the zazen from the 2-year-old.
Oh.
And if you can't protect it from the 2-year-old, protect it from the 2-year-old's parents. Someone needs to say, all of you must go.
I didn't understand why you brought protection into something where I'm always protected by God.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of the idea that we need guilt and that we need punishment. Guilt demands punishment. It's saying here that guilt is only possible in time.
That's right. Okay.
So what I'm saying is that even in this flawed world of ours, you can dispatch with the idea of guilt. Even here,
yes,
in 3 dimensions, you can get rid of guilt if you understand that it always has to do with protecting an environment and restoring it to order. It's not like someone is guilty.
Oh, okay.
That's like deifying. It's the opposite of deification.
Okay. I see you.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying do not take on guilt for something that don't take on that that clothing of guilt. So instead, see that each situation is an opportunity for the restoration of peace, I would say. And in that instance, you're saying, well, the restoration of peace is the removal of a disturbed child, somebody who's crying or whatever.
But let's say I owe Richie $1,000. He loaned me $1,000 at a time when I needed money. I said I would give it back to him. A year passed, 2 years passed, 40 years passed, and I never gave him the $1,000. And I have nurtured a sense of guilt for all of those years for not having given him $1,000. I have held that forward. How can I solve that guilt problem with me? Just to declare myself off the hook? It's it's a statute of limitations moment, or do I cut a check and I send it to Richie for $1,000, or I contact Richie and say, I just wanted to tell you, you gave me $1,000, and you know what? I still can't pay you back. I can address real-time friction, real-time out of square with my brother.
What you're saying is that you do not want this particular section to be the idea that I go around, now that I know that I'm guiltless, that I can just go around just doing whatever I want without any cause and effect. I understand that the Course can be used and abused. If you take this section and say, hey, I'm just guiltless, doesn't that give me the privilege to just do whatever I want? No. The answer is absolutely no, because anything that engenders fear or some sort of upset in another, you are perpetuating the actual thing that you think that you're so guiltless of. And so in any instance, it is up to me to be more awakened than, the rest of the world, if that's possible, and do what we would consider right to keep a sense that love is always there. You're going to want to always extend something that is reaffirms in a person
What
or
I'm
whatever.
saying, I understand what you're saying. I understand.
Okay.
And what happens here is I'm looking at this entire chapter as a challenge to the validity of the Course in Miracles for your average Christian.
Okay.
Because of the sinlessness of Adam, the sinlessness of humans, the guiltlessness and the blamelessness, and all this kind of stuff, that this is radically and easily misunderstood. And so what I'm going to say is, in the Course in Miracles, it does it with the word sickness as well. You can't be sick. What do you mean? I got 105 fever.
Right.
And the Course is telling me I'm not sick. And here it's saying, what? I just killed a bunch of people and I'm not guilty. You know, it does the same thing. So we have to understand some terminology. We have to do a little bit of forensic terminology with this thing.
I agree.
And that's why I keep insisting on breaking guilt into some other word, just in the same way that sickness has to be re-understood as a sickness of my relationship. In other words, if I say sickness is real, that puts me out of square, isolated from the sonship. I'm sick, they're well. I've created a duality that I then take shelter in and nurse this idea of being sick. I do the same thing with guilt. I create it for them, I isolate them, or I isolate myself, instead of realizing this is a made-up adjective, guilty, or sick. These are made-up adjectives.
Both of them are just that I decided to be separate. I've decided to be separate from God and the sonship. Each one of them is a form of separation.
But we have situations in society where we can turn into the pitchforks and torches moment, where all of us justified people can go on the warpath and hang all the evildoers. Why? Because they're guilty. They're guilty of misdeeds. They're guilty of treason. They're guilty of this. They're guilty of all these sins against humanity somehow, whatever form it takes, whether it's Adolf Hitler or somebody else.
Right.
And the whole word guilt, I paint them with guilt, I'm misunderstanding what's really required here. I paint a guilty person, and somehow they become like a piñata, and I go and bust them open to release my tension and my own sense of guilt. And the idea, that's why I keep saying, it's about restoration and protection. Those are two words I came up with in the moment. I didn't spend a lot of study with it. So it's necessary to get past this Gnostic understanding of, well, we're not guilty. Nothing really happened. In timelessness, we're all good. The sonship is blameless. We got to make it work for us. And as the Course has said in other places, the risk is developing a split mind. If I let certain people that did certain things off the hook, whoever they are, it's conditional to each ego what they consider a guilt worth punishing. I have to manage this situation, or I develop a split mind. If I do the Course in Miracles, I think, oh, okay, let's just give it that one. Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews. So he deserves, he's the only one in hell, I used to kid. Hell it only has one guaranteed guy, it's Adolf Hitler. If I want to keep that situation going, then I'm on the hook forever.
Right.
I have to somehow let that guy off the hook. And it sounds very ingenuous or insincere or Gnostic at best to say, he's innocent in the mind of God. God holds him as one of his precious children, just like everybody else. No, I have to deal with it right here in my 3D reality. I have to deal with that.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do.
So that I don't turn into a schizo trying to make the Course in Miracles true, while at the same time I believe Adolf Hitler is in hell.
Right. So how did you resolve that? How did you resolve your schizo mind? I guess is where I'm at. I don't understand what exactly is happening.
Well, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, you got to let Hitler off the hook.
Well, that's what I think too.
And the way you let Hitler off the hook is he either did real damage or he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a requirement to be protected from. And at this point, we need to be protected from his reputation as the most evil man that ever existed. It goes forward. We have to understand and be honest instead of taking the guilty pleasure of hanging him again and again and again in every Schindler on the Roof movie.
Yeah, and every Holocaust museum, I guess. So, gosh, I had a thought there. Anyway, I just think that it's my job. I'm not going to save the world by, trying to change anything out there. All I can do is exactly what you said, is when I think that there's something that needs to be blamed, whether it's on the flat screen or whatever else, and those people need to be blah, 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 hung, they need to go, they need to do a firing squad or whatever I decide.
Justice.
Justice needs to happen there. When I join my mind with that, that means that I too deserve justice for all my little iniquity, little things that go wrong in my life.
He who is innocent, throw the first stone.
Absolutely. So anyway, it's only up to me to not engage. I would say it has to do with engaging my mind with guilt and punishment. It doesn't mean that I know what needs to happen any more than when we pray about situations with family members or anything else.
You're right. It's not mine to judge. And the Course has said that again and again.
Because
it's the Holy Spirit is the judge of things, not me.
Exactly. And when I suspend my judgment, that leaves the opportunity for the Holy Spirit to give me another witness to an answer to what I am perceiving. Because all of it is being generated through my ideas. This projection and reflection that's coming at me has to do with me joining ideas or rejecting ideas. Or, I'm doing this push me, pull you in this world constantly. So if I'm going to put energy and effort into the ideas of guilt and punishment, then guilt and punishment is going to remain my world. So to me, this whole section is, will you take the Son of God off of the crucifix? Take him down. God didn't punish him. He did not do that. He's not doing that to you. He doesn't do it to any part of the sonship.
Okay. If Jesus rose from the dead, let's just get religious. If Jesus rose from the dead, it means he's alive.
Absolutely.
If he wrote this book, and I believe that, let's say that there's a Jesus kind of a character that has something to do with the authorship of what the words I'm reading, it means I'm in a relationship with him right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, right now, by looking at this and believing this stuff. So we can just forget the cross, okay? We can just forget it. We can say that's a historical artifact that talks about our society and what we would call the sickness that we have in our society in terms of our own constant guilt, constant desire to project, and all these kinds of things. It's valuable in that sense. But in terms of me, right now, like you're saying, it's not mine to judge, to figure out, to do anything. What it is my responsibility to do is if I've got a living Jesus talking to me, it's to talk back.
Yeah. It's to have a conversation.
Listen.
Be in relationship.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on. Paragraph 9. Accepting the atonement teaches you what immortality is. For by accepting your guiltlessness, you learn that the past has never been, and so the future is needless and will not be. The future, in time, is always associated with expiation, and only guilt could induce a sense of a need for expiation. Accepting the guiltlessness of the Son of God as yours is therefore God's way of reminding you of his Son and what he is in truth. For God has never condemned his Son, and being guiltless, he is eternal.
There's no price to be paid.
There is no price to be paid.
So this has to be understood. Let me just leave it there and read on.
Okay.
There's no price to be paid, okay? Let's figure this out together. Brothers and sisters who believe there is a price to be paid, Let's just say the Course is saying there is no price, and let's understand in the same way that we understand sickness, the term, and guilt, the term. Let's understand those terms. Paragraph 10. You cannot dispel guilt by making it real and then atoning for it. This is the ego's plan, which it offers instead of dispelling it. The ego believes in atonement through attack, being fully committed to the insane notion that attack is salvation. And you who cherish guilt must also believe it. For how else but by identifying with the ego could you hold dear what you do not want? This friend of mine one told, he was teaching in this school, and one of the kids at the school said, in my other English class, they told the lady told me that she would kick my butt down the hall until I learned to read this certain thing. And my friend said, let me ask you a logical question. How long would it take for you to learn to read that by being kicked down the hallway? At what point would you learn to read this section?
Right.
You don't learn by being kicked.
I know.
Do you?
No, you don't learn by being kicked.
By reading.
I always wanted to know about, what was it, the debtor's prison. Like, how do you pay debts when you're thrown in prison?
That's another one.
I don't understand that.
Right.
I don't understand what they did back then.
I'll tell you. Okay, well, that is sheer unbridled insanity. And if you think our justice system is based on anything but sheer and unbridled insanity, just spend a couple of minutes in court.
Oh, wow.
Paragraph 10.
Paragraph 10.
You cannot dispel guilt. Oh, I already just read it.
Yes, you did.
So we got the last one. All right. We're off the hook.
One more paragraph. Paragraph 11. The ego teaches you to attack yourself because you are guilty, and this must increase the guilt, for guilt is the result of attack. In the ego's teaching, then, there is no escape from guilt, for attack makes guilt real, and if it is real, there is no way to overcome it. The Holy Spirit dispels it simply through the calm recognition that it has never been. As he looks upon the guiltless Son of God, he knows that this is true. And being true for you, you cannot attack yourself, for without guilt, attack is impossible. You then are saved because God's Son is guiltless, and being wholly pure, you are invulnerable. Again, this is all teaching you that you are not a body.
A phrase that will take a long time to understand, that I'm invulnerable because I'm guiltless.
Yeah, you're guiltless.
Say something about that.
Well, as soon as you're
I was going to just, hang up the phone.
No,
but,
no. As soon as you're guiltless, you give the doorway to oneness is opened. So long as I maintain.
I'm not separate.
Yeah.
So then I can enjoy the resources of the perfect sonship.
Yes.
That's a resource.
And
if I isolate myself with guilt, I cannot share the resource that my brothers are out there with welcoming faces of Christ.
Yes.
That I can join.
And you can't see them either. I mean, so long as guilt and punishment are the structure that you believe in.
Well, I'll hide my face.
Yes, exactly. I did want to just address quickly about the ego teaches you to attack yourself because you are guilty, and this must increase the guilt, for guilt is the result of attack. It's this constant
Mm-hmm.
loop. And that, to me, is the structure of war. And for some reason, those guys are the bad guys, and so we're going to fire some bombs on them. And then these guys are the bad guys, so they're going to fire back and everything else. And then there's protect and defend and everything. And I recognize in my mind, for some reason, when does war really stop? When the resources go away. It has nothing to do with anybody winning.
When the bank owns the real estate.
Yes, exactly.
That's when the war stops.
It has nothing to do with somebody being more right or wrong, or somebody.
No. It's
somebody's punishment has now been fulfilled, and so therefore, we can all be, rising up and cheering and everything else.
No. A war is a triangular football of paper that they scoot along a boat-shaped conference table someplace far away. That's what a war is, and we just all have to die until they're finished playing that particular game.
Anyway, so let's not make war real any more real than the rest of the world. The rest of the
just to
tragedy.
Recognize that our whole cycle, the cycle you're talking about, is manipulated against us to pick up our pitchforks and torches and go after the Frankenstein monster and kill that guy.
That's right.
We're
and
manipulated.
Pick up a flag and decide which side you're going to be on.
We're played that game. That's the best game possible.
Yeah.
Get that guy. Everything will be better when we get that guy.
Let's not do that.
No.
Let's be done.
No, just be done with it, right?
Yeah,
and the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, for your homework, identify people that need to be in hell.
Yeah. And then forgive them.
And let God's people go.
That's right.
I don't know. Anyway, wow, there's a lot in it. It's a big one. It's a biggie. So, welcome comments on this one, especially the sin of Adam and guiltlessness.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.